Hey, what is up guys? I'm Kyle at Fortune, and today we're taking the Samurai from gas to propane. So basically every trail run we did last season with the Samurai had at least one part of it where it struggled because of the carburetor. This is definitely one of the longer videos that we have out there, so if you want to see any specific part, just look down in the description. There's going to be some links there. You can click on those and go right to the part that you're interested in, or you can sit through and watch the whole thing with us. I kind of hinted at this in our last video. I'm just totally done with carburetors, at least on the Samurai. I know a lot of people have good luck with their Webers or the 3K, get a lot of good support from Certified Machine, all that stuff. I'm just through with it. I've worked with the Weber for so long now, trying to tune it, do the good mods to it so it can run at an incline. None of them have worked out well for me. For us, it's time to move on. I've been looking at this propane kit for a long time, and not just because of the problems we've been having already with our carburetor, but also for the benefits of running propane. So there's definitely a lot of pros and cons with running propane, just like there is anything else. First, let's talk about running the carburetor on the Samurai for me. The pros of it are actually pretty big. One of them is it's cheap. It costs nothing for me to keep running it, right? Also, there's gas stations everywhere. Very easy to get gas in the tank and keep going. The last good thing about the Weber is that on the street, when it's nice and flat, that thing does great. When the Samurai was stock, I could easily do 70 miles per hour, and it did great on the highway. That's where the cons come in. Off-road, that Weber just really does not work well. Anytime I'm on an incline for quite a bit, it'll just start to slowly sputter, and then it'll finally die all the way, and there's no way to get the truck running again except to let it sit, maybe pour a little bit of gas in there, but usually I just have to go to flat ground and wait. This happened to me when we did our Signal Peak night run. I was actually leading the trail run on this. I was in the front, and we're going up a really easy part of the trail. It's just a dirt road pretty much, but it is kind of steep, and it's just a very sustained climb. Samurai died. Super lame. I had to back down the whole thing, and we had to take another route around. Another con to running this carburetor and some of the other ones is the tuning. I have tuned the heck out of this Weber. We live down around 1,000 feet, and we get up into the Sierras a lot, or the mountain range on the other side of us, and we're always going up and down in that altitude, and that tuning is really starting to kill us, because it's either I can tune it so it runs really well where we're at and trails at this elevation, or I can tune it for trails up there like the Rubicon and higher, where it's going to run there, but then again when I get it back home it doesn't run very well again. So that's another big one. Also, we tend to get kind of sideways in the Samurai. Sometimes it's leaning on one side or the other. And the last time we did that, it dumped a bunch of fuel out the gas filler. I think it was actually the vent down there. It was dumping fuel out there. When it was on its side for a long time, the carburetor didn't want to start up. So to remedy a lot of those things, we're switching to propane. Now let's talk about some of the cons of propane first. First, you can't just go to a gas station and fill up on propane. I'm sure there's some places out there that do it. I don't know of any, around me at least, where you can just pull up and they'll fill it in the tank in your vehicle. You usually have to take them out. So that's one huge problem with it. The other is it's not cheap. It costs quite a bit of money to get this set up if you're gonna not piece it together yourself and go with one of the kits like we did. As far as I'm concerned, that's pretty much the cons of running propane. Let's talk about the benefits. This is the big part. If you have a dedicated off-road rig like the Samurai is for us, these propane engines can run at any angle. Those times when we get on our side, the engine's still going to want to run. We don't have to worry about gasoline leaking out of there. We're going to have a better throttle response. The engine's going to run smoother. We are going to have extended life on our oil and our spark plugs, and we're not going to have to worry about tuning it really. Once it's set, it's set. It's going to work at every altitude that we want it to. Usually these propane ran engines can get to a lower RPM and recover. Unlike the carburetor I have, once it gets pretty low, it's just going to die and start lurching, and that's it. Propane is also a much cleaner way to burn fuel. And from what I've been reading, the majority of propane comes from US sources, so it's always good to go America first. So with all of that said, let's check out putting this propane kit on the Samurai. We're going to start with taking the gas components off the engine and off of the truck, and then start installing the propane kit. Once I started taking things off the engine, I made sure I put some blue masking tape on everything. That way I wouldn't forget to address it by the time we were all done, because some of these things, when you take them off, they just drop to the bottom of the engine bay and you can kind of lose sight of them. After that, anything that had an opening in it that I could possibly drop a bolt or nut into, I made sure I covered that up too, just to make sure I didn't add a big ol' headache for myself by dropping something down there. So we took this off of the Weber and drilled some holes in the included attachment arm right here, and then there's also another bolt holding it on right here. So that's how it goes. We had to drill this out a little bit, and we bent it back and then a little bit out. So you can see it doesn't line up perfectly straight, but it's pretty close. Got in there, had the wife test her out, pulls nice and straight and resets fine. Don't really want to take this off, so now we're gonna go ahead and throw the rest on and try to do it from the bottom, which of course is gonna be tricky, and I'm probably gonna drop a bunch of stuff down there. The bracket that we made to hold it off of this part right here was pretty sturdy because it has a dimple in it, but this part down here is where it had some bend in it. So we threw this part on, welded these two pieces together. We got another dimple added for rigidity, and then this thing's pretty solid now. It's not going anywhere. Next thing we need to do is get our coolant lines plumbed in, and then this will be our output for the gas. It's gonna go up here. We'll need to wire these two up. An accessory source. We got one that's not too far away, it's over there. And we'll plug that in. Getting closer. Got a bunch of plugs like these. Not really sure if we're gonna be using any of this stuff again, but I'm gonna put some caps on them just so nothing gets in there, and then if we end up using them later, hopefully they'll be clean, or at least how they were when we plugged them up. A couple more right here, down below right there. You can see those are all the fuel lines. Got some new caps for all these guys. We're getting there. All right, we've got one tank in the brackets. You kind of have to put the brackets together, so I'll show you how I did it on these tanks. And just by looking at these two, you can see that they're kind of different shapes, but these brackets are adjustable, so I'll show you how I was doing it. For now, you just want to get the bracket on the tank. So with my setup, I definitely want these buckles to be on the inside. That way I can get them, and when I unlatch them, there's enough room for them to hinge up. You see, if I mirror them the same way, it's really difficult to get the lips undone. I think what I'm gonna have to do is flip these ones around 180 degrees to get those buckles on the inside. Since we have two of each bracket, I just switched them up so all of these legs are facing back. That way we can access the nuts, bolts much easier. And what I decided to do was keep these about 8.5 inches apart. That way I can slide the tank forward or aft a little bit more if I want to, but I made sure I have enough room to open up these brackets, doesn't hit my seatbelt tie downs on the roll bar, but it can maybe leave me some more room right here. So if I ever build a table or something to hold some fluids on my tailgate, I can still use this space right here. So now next we need to mark these holes down here where we're going to drill and mount these. We're going to want to sandwich the hardware with a bunch of flat washers so it doesn't tear through the floor. We'll be looking at where to come through the floor with the hose that's going to be going to the engine. These big tubes that come with the kit, looks like most of these brass fittings are all 5/8. Same for all the heater connections down there. If you're gonna skip the heater and just go straight in, it looks like these were a little bit smaller than 5/8, so I'm gonna try using some 1/2 inch tube on that so we get a little bit better of a connection. To do that, I had to buy some adapters that converted the 5/8 to a 1/2 inch tube, so we'll see if that works before I cut anything. All right, make sure I got my sizes right. That one's nice and tight for 5/8. Pretty good fit for 1/2 inch, all right. This is how much we cut off, so we'll just measure it out and use that same amount of heater hose. All right, I went with just a tad less since we've got the brass fitting in there. All right, next we got to look at getting this LPG line routed and into the tub so we can hook it up to the tanks. So I left myself a bunch of hose for the LPG, so I've got a little bit more to play with than I actually need. You can see what I'm going to do first is wrap this end with some electrical tape. The reason why I'm doing this is there's actually some metal in there. You can see a little bit of it, and the metal combined with the fabric on the outside here, when you cut it, it will start to kind of bloom out like that, and it's really hard to get these on. So if you look inside this cap right here, you can see there are some threads. Well, these are left-hand threads, so the first thing you need to do is thread this thing on, but going counterclockwise. So when we've got the electrical tape on there, it will kind of help it stay on track, and then it'll also start to bunch up and peel off, which is totally fine. It doesn't matter. Just gonna keep twisting it on, and then inside we'll see. Once it's all seated up against this right here, we'll know it's on far enough. Just get a little bit more leverage on it. I'm gonna throw some of these vice grips on. But this is hard. This part is tough to get these threaded. You gotta keep putting pressure down and twisting it. All right, it's pushed all the way up in there. I'm gonna cut off this excess. Now you put this narrow end in there. You can see there's very shallow threads on there, and then there's threads inside here. So you push it in there, and this takes some real force because you're pushing this inside this tube, which is pretty compressed in this collar now. So while you're doing this and you're screwing it in, you want to get some point of reference on here and make sure that you're actually not pushing the tube out. The straight ones are harder. The one with the 90 in it, like this one, they're a little bit easier because you can kind of grab onto them and get a little bit of leverage on it. All right, looks like we got it now. You can see on this tape here, another reason why I like to use it, you can kind of use it as a guide to see if it's pushing the hose out or if it's actually going inside it. Now we'll do the other side. See, look at this. You can see how bad this is all frayed out. That makes it really hard to slide this thing over. See, I'm pretty dirty, just finished up. This is going to be the legit first start of this propane. I know on YouTube a lot of times guys are like, check out my first start, and it's like running perfect by then. This is legit the first start. It's so legit. I have a fire extinguisher right there because I don't know how this is gonna go. Let's see what happens. First thing I'm gonna do is turn on the propane, and I'm gonna check out all the connections with some soapy water. I'm gonna make sure none of them are bubbling up. If we have a good connection after that, We're gonna give her a start. You see that connection right there is blowing big bubbles. Means that one's not seating right either. So I just put the ignition on, that's turning on this little solenoid right here. And now we've got another leak right here. That one's gonna be a little bit trickier to tighten up. Well, there she is. Something's making some squeaky noise. Not sure what it is yet. Don't appear to be leaking any coolant. This is getting nice and warm like it's supposed to. So I turned up this set screw right here and basically upped the idle a little bit. But you can see, like right now, I just put it up and now it's not going back down. Yeah, I don't know what's up. Like that spring isn't strong enough or something. Yeah, it just feels like the return, there isn't enough pressure on the return, so if you give it any gas, it just stays there. All right, gonna have to tinker with it. All right, so I found a spring that fits. I decided to put it under this nut right here, and then it goes down to plugged port right here. Not really sure how strong that port is. There isn't a lot of pressure on this spring, so I think it's going to be all right, but I decided to push this idle up a little bit because I don't want this thing bogging it down and making it so I can't start up. Let's see if it works. So I think we finally got all of the bugs worked out and it's working out pretty well. There's a few things I'd like to address again later, like maybe redo my brackets when I have some more time. Just right now I'm trying to make the trail runs. Beautiful day out right now. I don't want to miss any of these trail runs, so I'm trying to just get this thing out there to where it's reliable or it's not going to break down on the trail. And it feels pretty good right now. My transmission in first gear is making a new sound. Not sure what that's about. I hope it just is because I have low oil in there or something, but we're gonna find out. Good thing I still have that other one in my garage. So there's a lot of steps in putting this in. I'm going to go through the whole thing and just kind of show you an overview of what it takes to install it and where everything goes. Start back at the source. Here is the propane tank. I've got two of them. These brackets just go straight into the floor there. We have them sandwiched with washers on both sides. Then we have the connector right there in the bottom right, and that takes it down to a 90 degree. Got a bunch of extra hose, you can see it winding around, and then right here it goes through the floor, and that is just a straight connector. Now I wanted a 90 like that, but the straight wasn't going to work under there, so I decided to put the 90 under there and the straight one right here. In the future I'd like to change that out to a 90 degree bend. That way we can just run it right here And then when we switch tanks, can run it right here. I like how these are spaced out so we can still put a little bit of gear right here. There's enough room for both these seats to come back more. We can get the tanks out by just opening up the brackets. They're not gonna hit these seat belts right here. And we also have some storage behind the seat. When we go do our Rubicon run later this year, it's gonna be a few days on the trail. We are gonna have stuff stacked back here, so definitely wanna have enough room for that. All right, so after it goes down on the floor, you can see there's the 90 right there. It hugs the frame all the way with the fuel lines, and it just hangs up out of the way. We've got to zip tie it a little bit better up there in a minute. You also notice the gas tank is out of here, so all that clearance back there, we can cut all these brackets off the bumper. Got a lot more room. So here's that gas line. It's coming up out of the frame right there, and it comes up, goes through this solenoid right here, which is connected to the accessory. It's actually the same fuse that my switch box goes off of over there, and then it's grounded to the battery right here. So whenever the ignition is on, this solenoid allows the gas to flow through this 90 and in here. This dark fitting right here, this is a plastic one, that feeds the gas up, goes into here, mixes with air from here, and you can see these all just mount to the manifold there. And then there's a valve in there that when you push the gas, pulls on this cable, the cable pulls on this lever, lets more air and gas in there. The spring pulls it back. This plate was from my Weber, and I just drilled out the holes a little bit bigger so we could use it again and mount it right there. You'll see there's a couple extra hoses in here. These ones with the brass fittings on the side are for the coolant to run through here. So this whole thing gets warm, and that way everything's not icing over. And what we did is, instead of going to the heater right there, there's two heater hoses, and they come up through this right here. In the kit, there's some Y connectors that split them off. We decided to just skip it. My heater is shot in here, so that's something for later on. But basically, it's just coming out of the engine through here and then back to the other one. So basically, we just added a big loop on it. It's not really that complicated. The biggest part of this is what they don't give you. Now, I've heard a lot of people complain about saying, I paid this much for the kit and they don't give me the brackets to run my throttle cable or connect it. And I'm with you. It totally sucks trying to make one of those. You can see mine is like a bunch of nuts and washers all crammed together, and then I have this spring in the middle. I totally understand why they don't do that though. It's because everybody's application is a little bit different. I've seen some people run this whole piece on the opposite side and it pulls from under. You can remove this throttle cable and kind of put it wherever you want. So it makes sense that they don't have a cookie cutter version of it, but it would be nice if they offered a few options so you didn't have to make something like that yourself. The second part is making this bracket to hold this piece, and mine isn't the best. I haven't even painted it yet, and I try to use some really thin metal, and I put a couple dimples in that piece and the bigger piece down there to try to stiffen it up, and that's fine. Once again, it would be nice if there was just a bracket that they gave you that could bolt on somewhere else. So that is the install, guys. Really happy with how this propane kit turned out. There's a lot of different things that I wasn't really expecting, but none of them were very difficult to overcome. Just a regular guy like me with zero training and zero experience in this, and I figured it out with almost no help. So if this is something you're interested in, you can do it yourself too. I made this video, you can look at the ways I did it, and hopefully down the line when I make those upgrades, I'll be able to put those in videos too. This kit doesn't really come with any directions. I was kind of hoping it did, and it says there are some. Really, it's just a set of helpful tips along the way. And it actually starts with everything already off your engine and ready to go on. If you're like me, I was kind of like, man, where should I start with this? I wonder what the best way to do this is. Follow the way I did it, it should go pretty well for you. If you like this video and you want to check out the Samurai and how it does off-road with this propane upgrade, make sure you go down there and subscribe. That's the easiest way to see these videos in the future. Thanks for watching, guys. See you next time.